Hello, everyone, and welcome back to FAIR, Families Against Incarceration Rape. Today, we're going to bring you the story of a mother who approached the National Prison Rape Elimination Commission, and she is a mother who lost her son due to him being raped in prison. So I'll tell you her story, and this is her testimony. On June the 14th, 2005. My name is Linda Bruttenmeyer, and I am here today to tell you about my son, Rodney Hulin. When Rodney was 16, he and his brother set a dumpster on fire in an alley in our neighborhood. The authorities decided to make an example of Rodney. Even though only about $500 in damages was caused by the fire, they sentenced him to 8 years in an adult prison. It's a bit harsh. We were frightened for him from the start. At 16, Rodney was a small guy. He was only 5'2" and about 125 pounds. And as a first-time offender, we knew he might be targeted by older, tougher adult inmates. When our worst nightmares came true, Rodney wrote us a letter telling us he'd been raped. A medical examination had confirmed the rape. A doctor found tears in his rectum and ordered an HIV test because he told us 1/3 of prisoners there were HIV positive. 1/3 of prisoners there were HIV positive. But that was only the beginning. Rodney knew if he went back into the general population, he would be in danger. He wrote to the authorities requesting to be moved to a safer place. He went through all the proper channels, but he was denied. After the first rape, did that settle in? After the first rape, he was returned to the general population. There, he was repeatedly beaten and forced to perform oral sex and raped. Repeatedly beaten and forced to perform oral sex and raped. He wrote for help again. In his grievance letter, he wrote, "I have been sexually and physically assaulted several times by several inmates. I am afraid to go to sleep, to shower, and just about everything else. I am afraid that when I am doing these things, I might die any minute. Please, sir, help me." Still, officials told him that he did not meet what they called the emergency grievance criteria. How could he not meet the emergency grievance criteria? We all tried to get him to a safe place. I called the warden, trying to figure out what was going on. He said Rodney needed to grow up. Okay, this kid is being brutalized and raped, and you're saying he needs to grow up? So let me get this straight. It's okay because he's a prisoner. So it's okay for him to be brutally raped against his will because he's in prison, right? Wrong. He said, "This happens every day. Learn to deal with it." So, ladies, listen. The warden said, "This happens every day. Learn to deal with it. It's no big deal." Now, getting back to the mother, she said, "We were desperate. Rodney started to violate rules just so he would be put in segregation. After he was finally put in segregation, we had about a 10-minute phone conversation. Think about it. Do you have a loved one that's saying, "Oh, I went to the hole," or they keep going to the hole, as they call it? Think about it. He was crying. He said, "Mom, I'm emotionally and mentally destroyed." That would destroy someone. That was the last time I heard his voice. On the night of January the 26th, 1996, my son hanged himself in his cell. He was 17 years old and afraid and ashamed and hopeless. He laid in a coma for the next 4 months before he died. 9 years have gone since we lost Rodney, but my family still suffers the consequences of what happened to him. My children are not the same as they were before. One of my children will start crying for no reason at all. My sweet little daughter has a don't mess with me angry attitude, world attitude all the time. She was very close to Rodney, and to this day, we have to watch what we say about him to her. She hasn't learned to let go. When we go to the graveyard, it's very hard for her to leave. Sometimes she tries to dig up the grave with her fingers. When it first happened, I was angry too at everyone. I still sometimes go to bed crying, or I wake up crying. I wonder what could I have done differently to prevent this from happening. But I've learned to let myself sit back and focus. I understand why Rodney did what he did. If I was in his shoes, I probably would have done the same thing just to escape. I tell people not to feel sorry for me. I've learned to deal with it by using my anger to help prevent this from happening to others. But I know that it is still happening. Let me repeat that. But I know that it is still happening. We know that what happened to Rodney could have been prevented. There are ways to protect the vulnerable inmates and ways to respond to the needs of prisoners who have been sexually assaulted. Even so, vulnerable prisoners are being sexually brutalized across the country every day. Let me repeat that. Even so, vulnerable prisoners are being sexually brutalized across the country every day. Rodney tried to ask for help and I tried to, but nothing was done. Rape in prison should not be tolerated. It should not be tolerated. It destroys human dignity. It spreads disease. It makes people more angry and violent. It kills. It's too late to help my son, but there is hope for countless other prisoners in this situation. Rodney did not deserve to be beaten. He did not deserve to be raped. He did not deserve to die. Please make sure that what happened to Rodney never happens again. Thank you. Now, is this still happening? Of course it is. From the research what I got, it appears that she has passed, the mother of Rodney has passed. So will you join this fight against prison rape by sharing FAIR, FAIR, Families Against Incarceration Rape? Share this, share this, share this. We still need to pick up the baton that this lady was carrying, and she was carrying it apparently years ago. So let's stop this brutality. Thank you.
You got all kinds of stuff. People beating up people for commissary. You got people beating up people for their tennis shoes. You got people just sodomizing people. Just going rambunctious.
Someone comes in and is kind of scared or hesitant and stuff like that, shy, he's gonna get turned out. The chances are real high that you're gonna get turned out. You're gonna get turned out. And they rape them. Go in there and rape them. And guys sometimes commit suicide because of that.
To all my family that I ever knew, I can't live life being mistreated, lied, and stolen from, and most of all being hurt. I most of all mean being behind bars when I say being hurt.
We had a telephone conversation. And he was coming home. And he said, Mom, I'm emotionally and mentally disordered. That's the last time I really ever heard his voice.
The physical exam and the records did document that there were tears in the anus at certain times. They usually call it at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, given as a diagram of a clock. Even though it was documented, it was just covered over it as if it never happened.
I have found forgiveness for those who have hurt me in my life, which has been a very short one, only 17 years.
Well, Rodney, he was a really small stature person. He probably didn't weigh 105 pounds at the most. I'll never forget his face and his eyes. He had the sweetest face. And he smiled. I remember he smiled a lot. Unfortunately, in the prison, there's a hierarchy or a pecking order. There are those that they call the haves and the have-nots. Rodney would be considered a have-not.
I'm very sorry to end my life this way, but if I don't do this, someone will. I'm saying I'd rather die of my own free will than be killed. That's why I must do this.
If I remember correctly, this trash can, we have called it was. It might have been right there, but I think it's been moved. Take out some more for us. I mean, we had flames coming out of the trash can that, I would say at least 10, 15 feet high, from different chemicals poured in and it's lighting it. You know, it barely been burnt. It a matter of minutes they had it out. But it's the fact of what little things you can do that can still have you put to prison. You know, misdemeanor arson, where did it get us? You know, it was funny at the time being, but where did it get him today? I mean, it's just hard to sit here and look at this and realize this is probably one of the last spots I actually seen him at was in that yard.
A kid like that shouldn't have been in prison, but because of the judicial system, is sending a lot of young, troubled kids to the joint because they don't know what else to do with it. The classification system, if it had been running appropriately, should have kept him out of a cell or out of an environment where a guy was sodomizing.
I think he was desperate, and unfortunately in this case, there were people in this department I was in that were less than professional, to say the least. The psychologist said, he's just another fucking inmate. And I rebutted, I said, but he's being raped and they're beating him. And he said, he probably likes it.
Frankly, in my own experience, it has almost never happened that we came up and verified that the offense did take place, or if the offense, or if there was some sexual activity, there wasn't some consensual agreement involved. Now, I'm not saying that rape doesn't take place in the penitentiary, because it does.
You know, you can see this pattern in some of the investigations that express this disbelief that a guy who did not want to have anal sex could be the victim of a rape. You know, that somehow, if it happened, it was because the guy wanted it.
State grievance, 12/21/95. I have been sexually and physically assaulted several times by several inmates. I'm afraid to go to sleep, to shower, and just about everything else. I'm afraid that when I'm doing these things, I may die at any minute. Please, sir, help me.
You were seen by the Unit Classification Committee on December 18, 1995, and your request for protection was denied unanimously. Unless you have new information to support your case for protection, your grievance is denied.
11396. I fear that my life is in danger. I've been threatened, jumped, and nearly stabbed many of times. I request to be placed on protective custody.
You have been reviewed twice by the Unit Classification Committee. Both times your request for protection was denied. Unless you have information to present, your request is still denied.
I called the ward. They asked the ward what was going on. What was he doing about it? And he wasn't doing nothing. He told me, he even told Rodney, learn to grow up. You're just a little boy. Learn to grow up. This happens every day. Learn how to deal with it. It's no big deal. And I've been told that so many times.
Even when I would ask him, I said, I'm trying really, really hard to get you some help. Can you hang on? He'd say, I'll try real hard.
P.S. I love you all. I wish I could be with you all. Spiritually I am. Signed, Rodney Hulin. I love you, Mom and Dad.